Hey everyone, this is Mark Bates. This is the Rabbit Room Apologetics podcast. All right, we heard back from our little troll, Unknown Alien 475, and he actually did some research. Good for you. Okay, so here's what he said. So you wish me to show evidence? A little snarky there, aren't you? But that's okay. That I can do. A study done by Heng Lee and Richard Durbin, done in 2012, actually it was 2011, studied population bottlenecks in several ethnic groups over the last several millennia. It found between 10 to 60,000 years ago, many populations experienced several severe bottlenecks, with milder ones found in Africa. This is expected based on the genetic diversity shown in today's human population. Okay, and it's also based on modern scientific understandings of the time frame and of archaeology, none of which have been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. Okay, but that's okay. These guys are working within their confines, right? So Lee and Durbin. However, what they did not find was proof of a ginormous is a very scientific word, by the way, genetic bottleneck around 6,000 years ago. You would expect to see that if the human population at that time was only 2 individuals. So we have demonstrable genetic evidence, not only that doesn't support the existence of Adam and Eve, but directly contradicts it. I don't think so, but okay. This proves beyond reasonable doubt that Adam and Eve were not real people. Okay. Interesting. You can, once again, keep saying whatever you want. It's not necessarily true. If you wanted to prove they were, you'd need to make a replacement study for this that would also indicate genetic bottlenecks for all other species on Earth, such as we do not see in either genomics or a paleontological record. Well, actually, you do. Okay? If you look in the paleontological record, you'll see that creatures tend to come in big lumps, right? There is an explosion of life at the Cretaceous period, right? Before that, it was almost nothing. Then this giant explosion of life. It wasn't a gradual tree-like growth of life. It just exploded across all different phyla, all different species. So you have to explain that, okay? You also have to explain several things that are found in the archaeological evidence. One, there are specific places where most of the archaeological bones, right, of ancient creatures are found. They're found in big, giant lumps, right? But they're all mixed together, and so it's like, that's not the way fossils are supposed to operate. When I was in college many years ago, they said, it was gradual and slow, and because you had scavenging and stuff like that, you're not going to get a lot of these forming, and they're going to form mostly in swamps and stuff. And there's no evidence for any of that. Now, I'm not here to argue young Earth, old Earth, but I can tell you that there's no such thing as evolution. Okay, and we can have that disagreement anytime you want to. Okay, so you don't have any evidence there, and you didn't provide evidence of all that stuff happening. So, and while I can't directly disprove the notion of a literal Garden of Eden, well, you don't need to, because I don't say that there's a literal Garden of Eden. It's a theological construct. I can say for certain there were no animals or humans or anything at all in it. Well, then you certainly are making a statement saying that you know something. This is assuming, of course, that it was ever a real place. Once again, we'll talk about that. Since no evidence exists, even suggests its existence, the burden of proof is on you to provide that. Well, assuming I even made that statement. See, the burden of proof won't be on me if I made that statement. Of course, if you watch the videos, you would see I never make that statement. Done deal. He knows it's a deal. Adam and Eve are disproven beyond reasonable doubt, and in science, that is the best you can ever get. Well, actually, no, but because what all the science you're quoting is very disprovable. Okay, and he actually cites the population study and its publication date, which, once again, I want to point out, he said 2012 up above, so he obviously was running through this very quickly. All right, here's my reply. Thank you for actually citing a study. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, most people don't. And so the fact that you did some research is proof that you're trying, and I appreciate that. Most commentators don't do that, so I appreciate the effort. However, the paper you cited does not say what you claim it says, and there are several important issues with how it is being used. Okay, now once again, I am not a PhD in genetics and whatever else would be involved in this, but I have done enough research in this area. I have multiple degrees, some of them with statistical backgrounds, to look at statistics and understand this is not what this study says. Hingley and Richard Durbin, Inference of Human Population History from Individual Whole Genome Sequences, Nature, 475, right? And I'll give you the actual pages, 493 to 496. This paper introduced the statistical method called PSMC, pairwise sequentially Markovian coalescent. Okay, and this is just another way of looking at statistics. And the problem with it is that, to the best of my knowledge, I could be very wrong here, there is not another group of scientists using statistics who has said that this statistical method is beyond reproach. I know of a couple who have used it in subsequent papers, but there's been no determination that this is the, as you would put it, the end-all of statistical knowledge about this. This paper attempts to reconstruct ancient population history from genome sequences. However, an important limitation of this method is widely acknowledged in population genetics. PSMC has very poor resolution for very recent time periods, especially within the last 10,000 years or less. In other words, the method used in that paper cannot reliably detect a bottleneck around 6,000 years ago in the first place. The genetic signal required to identify such recent events simply has not accumulated enough recombination data. So the study does not rule out a recent bottleneck. It simply cannot detect one with that methodology. You have to understand the statistics that you're quoting from. And unfortunately, in this case, unknown alien, you don't know the statistics and behind it very well. I'm not claiming I know them as well as either Lee or Durbin would, but I know enough about statistics. I've taken enough, and I had to take statistics for all my advanced degrees to know enough that this in itself is not a done deal. It answers all the questions, kind of a statistical proof. Okay, effective population size, right, is not actual population size. Another issue is difference between effective population size and actual census population size. Genetic models estimate effective population size, which reflects the amount of genetic diversity maintained over time. It is not a literal headcount of individuals alive at a moment of history. A population can pass through a very small founding group while still displaying a much larger effective population signal because earlier genetic diversity persists in descendants, recombination redistributes ancestral DNA, population structure alters the statistical signal. And by the way, these were mentioned in the paper. Okay? Because of this, effective population size, NE, cannot be equated directly with the number of living species at any specific time. 2. Your argument assumes a 6,000-year timeline. The Bible never states this. Your argument assumes that the Bible claims humanity began 6,000 years ago with two individuals, but the Bible doesn't state that anywhere. The 6,000-year chronology comes primarily from Archbishop James Ussher's 17th century reconstruction, which attempted to add the genealogies together mathematically. However, biblical genealogies are not designed as modern chronological records. Ancient Jewish genealogies frequently skip generations intentionally. So, for example, Matthew's genealogy of Jesus compresses Israel's royal history into 3 symbolic groups of 14 generations. Matthew 1 through 8 through 11. Now, there's a theological reason he does that, but it's not germane to this discussion, so I'm not going to bring that up or define that for you. Omitting several kings that appear in the Old Testament record. This demonstrates that biblical genealogies functions primarily as theological lineage structures, not exhaustive chronological limits. Okay, so Ussher's attempt, and for 17th century, it was a valid attempt, is not proof of any kind. Biblical manuscript traditions produce different chronologies. Even if someone attempted to build a strict chronology from Genesis, the results vary significantly depending on the manuscript tradition. For example, text tradition, approximate. Okay, this didn't format properly. I apologize. Right? Basically, we're saying is that the Masoretic text is supposed to be a little. I apologize. This isn't format. Masoretic text is supposed to be 4,000 years. Right? Start Septuagint has it about 5500 BC. The Samaritan Pentateuch has it at 4300 BC. So these differences show that even ancient Jewish textual traditions themselves did not treat Genesis genealogies as precise chronological calculations. Okay, Genesis does not explicitly require Adam and Eve to be the only humans alive. Another assumption in your argument is that Adam and Eve must represent the only humans on earth. But the Genesis text itself does not explicitly say that. Several clues suggest that other human populations may already exist outside the garden. Cain fears that other people will kill him, right? That's in Cain builds a city. The narrative never explicitly claims Adam and Eve were the sole humans created. Many scholars therefore understand Adam as the covenantal representative head of humanity, rather than necessarily the sole biological ancestor of all humans. This lines closely with Paul's theology in Romans 5, right, where Adam functions as the representative head of humanity in contrast with Christ. Genealogical versus genetic ancestry. Modern population genetics has actually strengthened this distinction. Geneticists such as Joshua Sumidas, right, he's from Yale, I believe, have shown mathematically that a couple living only a few thousand years ago could easily become genealogical ancestors of all living humans. And he's got a PhD. He teaches at Yale. I mean, he's well known in genetics. Even if humanity retained genetic diversity from larger populations, genealogical ancestry spreads extremely rapidly through populations, meaning that within a surprisingly small number of generations, a pair of individuals can become universal ancestors without replacing all the previous genetic diversity. Okay, unknown alien. You probably should have is look at studies looking at mitochondrial DNA, right? Because those are almost always from the mother, right? In any individual, if not always from the mother. I think it's like at 90% or higher, but we'll let that go. I've done just a little bit of study here, and the number of potential Eves, so to speak, is very small for the human genome as it exists. Some have said it's only one mother. Some have said there are a couple. It doesn't really matter that much to me. The idea is that using maternal mitochondrial DNA, right, you don't have a lot of so-called Eves that account for all the population of the world right now. Okay, there's still lots of study on that one, so I'm not going to rest my hat on any of that, but just keep that one in mind. Okay, the Garden of Eden in biblical cosmology. Finally, your comment assumes Eden must be a normal geographic location on Earth. And you talk about there are no humans, there are no animals there, and all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, how do you know that it was on Earth? Within the biblical and Second Temple worldview, Eden functions as sacred space where heaven and earth overlap, not merely a terrestrial garden. It's a nexus between heaven and earth, essentially. Eden is associated with the holy mountain of God, right? And that's Ezekiel 28:13. Rivers flowing from Eden reflect the ancient Near Eastern motif of cosmic waters descending from a divine mountain. The temple itself was architecturally designed as a symbolic micro-Eden, filling the garden imagery such as cherubim, trees, and flowing water. In the Second Temple Jewish understanding, sacred spaces like Eden and the temple functioned as portals where the heavenly realm intersected with the earthly realm. Thus, attempts to disprove Eden by looking for a normal geographic garden or stating that it couldn't have happened in a normal place, it misunderstands the theological cosmology of Genesis itself. So in conclusion, the study you cited does not demonstrate what you claim it demonstrates. The methods used cannot reliably detect bottlenecks within the last 10,000 years or less. It estimates effective population size, not literal population numbers. The 6,000-year assumption is not stated in the Bible. Biblical genealogies intentionally skip generations, so you just can't count that. Biblical theology allows Adam to function as a representative head of humanity, something genetics cannot evaluate. I'll also like to add in there, look into maternal mitochondrial DNA as some evidence that there are only a small number of what we'll call Eves, potentially for the entire modern human population. You might look into that. And tell me if I'm wrong. If you look into it and show me where I'm wrong. I'm not claiming anything big on that. I've seen some of those studies. Therefore, the claim that Adam and Eve are disproven beyond reasonable doubt, and that's a bombastic claim, goes far beyond what scientific evidence actually shows. A scientist would never say something like that, by the way. Okay? Only someone who are quoting scientific papers and don't even know what the papers say would say something like that. So you got to tone down a little bit, all right? Science can study genetic diversity, but it cannot adjudicate theological categories such as covenant representation, sacred cosmology, or biblical narrative structure. These are different domains of inquiry. So, good effort. I appreciate that you did something and you actually posted it and you gave me a citation. So, thank you for that. Once again, look some deeper. I'm going to tell you where to look. Like I said, look at the mitochondrial DNA. Tell me if that holds any weight in your mind or not. I don't know. Go ahead and look at the Bible, because if you're going to quote me, because this is a Bible channel, so if you're going to attack it, then at least look at it and tell me where it says it's a literal 6,000 years, and it's literally only two people, which I've talked about here. But you also have to read it in the original Hebrew and or Greek. If it's the LXX that you're reading, the Septuagint, or Aramaic, if you're going to try to read the Septuagint, the Samaritan Bible. So be prepared for some work, okay? But I appreciate this, and it was a really good effort. So thank you very much. This is Mark Bates. All right, so everyone, if this is good stuff for you, please like the video, share it as you feel like people who need this. You want to talk about this one? Let's form a little study group and build some evidence, and let's talk about pros and cons to the arguments here, and let's build out a forum that can talk about this stuff. Right? I'm here to help guide you. I'm not going to shoot down anyone specifically. I will give you things to think about and grow. I don't claim to have unlimited knowledge on this stuff. So thank you for that. Look in the description if you want a 30-day free trial and a discount for Logos software, which is what I use here, and all these nice little pop-ups come as part of that, and a lot of the research came through Logos software, so you might want to think about doing that. And as always, have a great and very blessed day, and remember, God is good all the time.